Hey parents, we're here exploring STEM. We get a lot of questions from our kindergarten, first and second grade parents around this. And to do that more in depth, we're going to look at the engineering design process today with our creator, Hannah. So Hannah, welcome to the show. We're glad to have you. You're a bit of an expert in STEM. You worked at a STEM engineering school. You did lots of science in college. You now have a master's in education. And more importantly, you are actually building our whole STEM set of books. Little Explorers and Junior Scientist. You have a novel coming out that's more STEM based. So glad to have you here.
Thanks for having me. Excited.
So when we started talking about this, you were like, hey, there's STEM, but there's really this underlying engineering process that we're using to build the STEM schools. And I remember my mind being sort of blown. I was like, wait, what is this engineering design process? So would you just walk us through that today?
Absolutely. Yeah. I had never heard of the engineering design process until I got into my student teaching internship. And all of a sudden, it was how we framed teaching engineering design, science, and like exploration in an elementary school setting. And I loved it because it was super hands-on. The kids learned a song. It was super tangible. And we knew each of the steps and like the way that we work through things. So it is a few steps that we follow just in every time we think about problem solving or designing, creating, that's what we're thinking about. So we have the very first step, the most important step in science is asking good questions. And so that's our first step.
Easy for first and second graders for sure.
Really easy. I'm sure you parents have had thousands of questions thrown at you every single day, like why are trees green and why are we going where we're going? And so that's what we're fostering. We're fostering ask. And over time, we're building what's a good question versus just, a throwaway question. But ultimately, we're just thinking about the problem. Like, what are we asking? What are we solving? And so we'd often start with that step. Then we go from ask into imagine. And this is the purely independent step for our kids in the classroom. They would normally be drawing and they're creating a solution, but they're not working with other people yet. We're just working by ourselves, drawing what we think a cool solution to the problem is, thinking like crazy, wacky things. It doesn't even have to be realistic materials at this point. We're just imagining to the limits of our brain. And then we kind of bring it back down to earth with the next step, which is planning. This is always the hardest or the most fun step, depending on how your kid can view it. But this is where we bring in other people. It's the collaboration step. And so you're having to take your independent imagination of your solution to a problem, and you're having to match it up with other people who have their own independent imaginations. And now all of a sudden you're coming together and you're building a plan, something that's realistic and that's grounded in materials and something that you can actually do and accomplish, which is hard for 6-year-olds with limited materials, but we're trying. And from plan, once they can show me or you that they have a plan, they have materials, they know exactly what they're going to use, they know how they're going to build it, then you go into create, which is maybe the scariest step for parents.
As you say create, and then you were talking about with the limited materials, I thought, am I going to have a Hobby Lobby at my house? Or parents have like a whole wall time?
No. And I promise sometimes we would limit the number of materials that they can use because 6-year-olds will go to town and like put 40 billion plastic cups on something that does not need it. So feel free in this create to just say, here's your limitations, here are your boundaries. Or if you're unafraid and you want your house to be a mess that afternoon, you can say, use whatever you see and you can be fine with it. And so create is them taking their plan and making it real. And you can decide how to help them do that. It can be outside in your backyard. It can be in your kitchen. It's really just whatever you have on hand. And they should know what they have available to them all the way back in plan, because that's kind of where they're labeling and thinking about it practically. And create is, can be as messy or not messy as you want. We'll leave that up to you. Sometimes days in my classroom were super messy. Sometimes they were super not. Depends on the task at hand. And then one of my kids' favorite parts, and every kid's favorite part, is they get to test their creation. So we go back up to that question that we had. Maybe it's, how do you make a race car? How do you fill water from the tap to a bucket? I don't know. But you get to test your creation. And it's somewhat limited by the supplies you have. We'll be realistic, but they get to see if it works. And if it works, that's great. Most often, I'll be honest with you, it doesn't work, which leads us right into our next step, and it's improving, which is the hardest part developmentally for a kid, is they feel like they're done, but it didn't work. And so now they have to figure out, they kind of at the end want to just throw it out. But That's what we're trying to get them not to do. We're saying some parts of your thing worked, some parts didn't. How do you improve it to make it better? And this is the part of the cycle that can go back and forth between test, improve, as many times as your sanity would allow. And you can let them kind of really define their idea and refine it into something that works. And then at the end, when you have something that they're proud of, we want to share it to a scientific community, to their friends, to their families. Who knows? We're going to
sharing.
Yes. And they do not have to be TikTok influencers. It does not have to go on your camera reel if you don't want it to. Share is really the idea that we're asking them to explain what they created and why it helps.
Mm-hmm.
So in the classroom, often we would have like mini share circles. Maybe they bring their creation and they'd have to describe what their favorite part about it was, what it solves. Sometimes they would just take a picture of it. And we had cute little apps that would let them record their voice over it. Stays in your camera roll, not going anywhere else, and just kind of explaining what they did. And they can even explain it, just like take them down the street to a neighbor and have them explain what it is, explain it to their friends, their siblings, you. We're just trying to get them to explain how they made the world a little bit better. And that is the engineering design process in a nutshell.
I love that the end is like, you can't just create something and not know how to present it or how to communicate what you learned and present it. Well, it's a great process. I just love this engineering design process. It helps me understand, I even think, the basis of STEM. So thanks for walking us through it. And a reminder, if you're looking for great, fun, but developmentally appropriate STEM books that really force kids to think through some of this engineering process, it's both these and our little Explorer books have that. And we hope that you'll subscribe for more great content around kindergarten, first and second.